What's up guys, Brian here. We're going to do a 2021 EOS deep dive. We're going to talk about EOS as an investment. We're going to talk about the difference between EOS and Eos IO. We're going to talk about Block.One and its future. We're going to talk about the CTO Dan Larimer leaving and the repercussions of that. We're also going to talk about my investment in EOS and the Eos IO software as far as the sister chains and all that is concerned, and what I'm doing going forward. And we're going to talk about a lot of things, so let's get into it. Not going to go super deep on the tech. Now, EOS is part of the Coinbase Earn program, so you do have a few videos and stuff that you can watch to get a little bit deeper dive, but they do explain the difference between Eos IO and EOS. Basically, the Eos IO software is open source software that you can use to deploy, a blockchain of your own, or you can build on one of the four, if not more. I think there's just four. There's Eos, Telos, Ultra, and Wax that are public chains built with the Eos IO software, so you could deploy a dApp on those. But basically, that's the difference. Eos is just one of the public chains, the coin for one of the public chains, and is currently ranked 16th with a market cap of 2.5 billion. Let's go back over here. Delegated proof of stake. So this was developed by Dan Larimer. So he was one of the founding. He basically developed BitShares back in the 2013-2014 timeframe. Just to kind of tell a little bit about myself, I actually mined ProtoShares back in 2013, which became BitShares. And then in 2016, Dan's second project, which was the Steem blockchain. I was one of the original bloggers on the Steem blockchain, so going through steemit.com, and then there was several other apps that were eventually built onto that you could interact with the blockchain, and then invested in EOS in 2017-2018, and have been invested this entire time. So delegated proof of stake, essentially, basically it's like elected members that are processing the transactions versus anybody just being able to jump on and deploy mining hardware to mine blocks and stuff like that. So instead of being proof of work like Bitcoin, Litecoin, Monero, instead of being like that, proof of stake, delegated proof of stake is elected members of the community are then processing the transactions essentially. That's as far as I'm going to go into that. So the Eos token, once again, one of the main public chains is the Eos blockchain, and so it is using the Eos IO software, and the Eos token is the main token of that. Now, it has good liquidity because it's on Coinbase, Kraken, Binance, all the major exchanges. So CPU, net, RAM, basically they kind of set this up a little bit like a computer, just to sort of draw an analogy in people's mind. And so you have certain resources on the network, and that's supposed to limit spamming of the network, because the Eos IO software allows for free and instant transactions. Now with that, you're going to get a lot of spam, and so these were mechanisms put in place that you don't have unlimited resources, because you will get resource hogs. That's part of the reason with just regular email that we have so much spam email, because it is free essentially to send an email. So if you charge a little bit to do something, then when somebody tries to do it in magnitude, then they ultimately get slowed down if they're trying to blow like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of transactions. Developing apps on Eos IO, so basically you can code in C++, and if you want to go further into that and kind of how to create those, you can click here. So if you saw the intro roll, basically I was a mentor at the EOS hackathons. I've been kind of this pundit of kind of EOS mainnet and the sister chains and all that over the last 3+ years. So I'll say this, kind of taking a step back, the community is obviously spend a large amount of time, and shout out to community members, EOS Phoenix, EOS San Diego, MaxDApp, which is like MDX Crypto now, Colin Talks Crypto, Happy Money Man. I don't know who I'm missing. I'm sure I'm missing some people, but the community is large. Dallas Rushing, who has Karma. I'm sure I'm missing some people, but basically, Crypto Dunker as well. Everybody's expended a lot of energy in this over the last few years, and it was upsetting to see Dan Larimer, the CTO, leave. But again, like I said, this is like the third project that he's left. He left BitShares, and then he was with Steam Incorporated, founded it, and then he left that. So it is upsetting. It certainly is upsetting. And I think, just to be fair with the Dan Larimer situation, he is a brilliant guy, and I think that he could probably mentally process about 5 times the amount of information that a normal person can process. So maybe a 4-year span of time feels like 20 years for him. That's all I can really kind of think from that standpoint. And I think that he sees the gimmicks of the cryptocurrency world in general. So if you look at a lot of this stuff, and it's not to knock on everything, I have investments in all this stuff, Bitcoin, Ethereum, all this, but I think that he sees kind of what's happening with the Ethereum beacon chain, and that's kind of gimmicky in itself. Why do you need to lock up Ethereum for potentially 2 years or something or more, for them to develop this and try to scale it and stuff like that? It's just a way to reduce liquidity and lock up a bunch of supply. You see this with other chains as well, Cardano. I mean, obviously, we, in 2017, the thing was basically just a wallet, and then they finally had the incentivized testnet, and then now you can finally stake and get real ADA tokens. But again, and again, I have an investment in Cardano. I have a big investment in Ethereum. So don't take this the wrong way. I see the psychological ploy that they're playing is, if you lock up a bunch of tokens, and that's going to bid well for the price, because you're going to restrict the supply, and basically there's going to be more demand than there is supply out on the open market, and therefore the price is going to appreciate. So I think he wanted to build something that would change the world. And I think he sees the psychological ploys that, Cardano and Ethereum and some other chains are employing, and it frustrates him because, he wanted to, solve a real world problem and stuff. But again, you basically got a smart contract platform right here with Cardano that is not capable of smart contracts, and it's been out for 4 yethis. I mean, come on, it's just silly. So, and I'm just going to call how it is, guys. And that's not, I had to, drop some truth pills, into the XRP army's, mouth, try to force feed them and say, hey, you guys are in an uphill battle. You might want to look for greener pastures for your money for the time being. And then people were downvoting me, boo, boo, we're going to ride this out, so you do what you want. So I'm just going to try to give it to you straight, guys. I'm trying to be fair to everybody. So in regards to that, I think Dan Larimer wanted to solve a real-world problem. BitShares was ahead of his time. Obviously it was kind of DeFi, decentralized exchange, all this kind of stuff in the 2014 timeframe. And it was up in the top 3 or 4 on CoinMarketCap at the time, and it fell off. That's one thing you'll see. Dan leaves these projects. They start to slide. His attention wanes, goes somewhere else. Stuff starts to slide. He leaves, and then the price just gets destroyed. BitShares, currently being at 151 spot right now. And you got this extremely long tail. It's going to be hard for it to come back from that, because there's obviously, newer decentralized exchanges that are maybe a little bit easier to use, that solve the problem of liquidity a little bit better currently. So Steam, same thing. I'm not seeing the number on here, but I think it's about 140th or something, 140th. He basically was Steam Incorporated, had a falling out, left that to develop Eos, or the Eos Io software, so to speak, and it has slid to about 140th. And then that community, Steemit.com, was bought by Justin Sun, and then the Steam community, forked over to Hive, but then it is depreciated even more, because typically you make a copy of something and it isn't going to perform as well as the original. That's just typically been the case. So it's in 175th. And we're talking the Steem blockchain was number 3 on CoinMarketCap in 2016. You see this ginormous spike right here. It went absolutely hockey stick parabolic compared to the Bitcoin price as well as the US dollar price. And, really shot up. And that was just insane. But it did solve a real world problem in the fact that, and these are some of the only examples, Steem, like the Steem blockchain and the Hive blockchain, to me, are some of the only ones that have really solved a real world problem in the crypto space that isn't just to service kind of the greater crypto industry. It actually, would be obviously, freedom of speech and all that, which is one of the main things that I think that blockchain technology can solve, because you can't necessarily shut down one potential, centralized server and all that kind of stuff, and cut somebody off like we've seen Parler get cut off here recently. So, and I think that's part of the reason why Dan left too. And he's hinted a lot of this stuff that he didn't feel that what Block.One was working on was going to solve that problem, and he wanted to tackle that. So let's get into this a little bit more. So the Eos IO software is in the Eos blockchain, is doing the most capacity and is the fastest blockchain in the world, the Eos IO software, because it has half-second block times. Steem and Hive had 3-second block times. So Eos, Telos, those are both Eos IO software. Tron, 3-second block times. Stellar, 3-second block times. Ethereum, they did their upgrade. It was 15. I think it's more like 13 second per block, but obviously this is proof of work. Hive, 3-second block times. Delegated proof of stake again. So we're going to talk about some of the downfalls of delegated proof of stake, and one of the things that's kind of like that causes here in a little bit. But over time, there was a lot of tools built on top of EOS and just the EOS IO software, being able to connect to these different chains and stuff like that. So EOS Authority built some really good ones, but you could interact with it, go to your wallet, go to the resource exchange and lend out resources. You could get your air grabs, you could manage your resources, manage your keys, create accounts. You could do all this stuff. Look up stuff. Obviously, as a block explorer, you see the blocks going by. Super cool. So the way it works is basically you have the block producers, and they'll rotate in, solve several blocks, and then it'll kick to the next one. And then there's 21 block producers, and then there's a bunch on standby. Now, one of the things that happened to this is, and this is another interface, blocks.io, that you can interface with. Here's the block producer. So it got taken over by a lot of Chinese block producers. They had large investments at first, and I think that they kind of did voter collusion and kind of sock puppetry kind of scenarios and kind of took over the chain. And then when the EOS crowd sale that took place in 2017, 2018 was under fire from the SEC, and so there was a lot of things that was kind of, I think, hamstringing Block.One of being able to actually solve some of the issues that kind of took place on the mainnet when it first launched. Their hands were a little bit tied, I think, and so these Chinese block producers kind of took over. Block.One never voted with their stake, early on, and that caused a lot of issues, caused a lot of things to kind of spiral out of control, and they had to be very kind of hands-off on the public chains. It was more like, hey, all we said we were going to do is mainly just create the EOS IO software, and the community can launch that, and that's essentially what they did. So we do have a working chain that's half-second block times, fastest blockchain. You can deploy dApps on it. You have the on-ramps for large liquidity from Coinbase and Binance and Kraken and lots of other exchanges with a lot of volume. So we do have that. So that you can say that's one of the positives. Now, with some of the wallet services were great, Anchor, Scatter, you could connect your ledger, Trezor. I don't know how people like pronounce that exactly. But anyway, like I don't have scatter or anything on this particular computer, this particular install. But basically it would just be like, boom, log in. You would just go scatter. And then it would bring up all your accounts. You could click on it. You were logged in. Easy. And then you could go to your wallet and then, interact with all these things and send tokens and stuff like that. So great tools were out there, guys. I mean, you really have a platform that you could develop on. You can connect to these other chains too. Proton. I need to look into that actually, because I didn't even know Proton was on the Eos IO software, but that kind of makes sense looking at this, to have this Proton thing up here. So I need to look into that. But again, you do have sold chains, but that was an advantage and a disadvantage because the community kept fracturing. Boss was another one, but I don't know if anybody really did anything with that. So again, and for the original investors, for the EOS, the people that came in during the crowd sale, the thing was we were able to get EOS, and then we got like Telos, and then we got a bunch of airdrops and stuff. And my original thing was to sell all those for EOS and stack more EOS, because for the sister chains and for the projects to survive, EOS needed to survive. EOS needed to become the dominant thing. And I felt that EOS was positioned to become the number one and overtake Ethereum and Bitcoin. And, that fell short, very, very short. And I'm going to kind of show you my outlook kind of going forward here as we get further into this. Now let's talk a little bit more about Block.One. Obviously, they ran the crowd sale. They generated $4 billion, and they did, give the community the ability to launch these public chains on the software and doing the updates and stuff like that. They ran some very epic hackathons, which you saw that I was at. I was at the Sydney hackathon and the one in San Francisco, and then I participated in the remote one as a technical mentor for the remote one in Africa. So, was very, very into kind of everything that was going on. They really put on a great hackathon series. It was epic, guys. I really cannot say enough about like how awesome those were, and the different people that I met at the hackathons. Like that was like a huge thing that came out of it. Now, one disadvantage to Block.One was, and this is one thing that actually happened to Steam or Steam Incorporated, is they went to Blacksburg, Virginia, so that Dan Larimer could work on that project. So these companies keep going to Blacksburg, Virginia to kind of cater to Dan Larimer, and then he quits their project, and then they're sort of left in this smaller market. So I think, and this is not saying anything bad about the employees of Block.One, but a lot of them were people that were around the Blacksburg, Virginia area. And it was very hard to get kind of your premier blockchain developers and stuff to Blacksburg, I'm sure. It's a lot of people didn't want to go there. Now, they have other offices. They have one in Hong Kong. They have one in Arlington, Virginia now. And probably now that Dan has left, they probably will pack up and not be in Blacksburg, Virginia anymore, which then presents another problem, because these people that weren't EOS people in the first place, or they weren't crypto people in the first place, they got a job now there. They did have like obviously good aptitude. They have learned the situation. And now if they leave, those people might be like rooted in Blacksburg and not want to leave Blacksburg. And then you've got this issue where you just lost a lot of your talent there to try to gain like more talent on a broader scope, I guess you could say. And again, that's not saying anything bad about the employees that were there and stuff, but I was really blown away by it when I was at the EOS hackathon, because half of the mentors were actually employees of Block.One, and half of them were like community members. And I was really blown away because a lot of the people who worked at Block.One did not even really have an investment in cryptocurrencies, and they didn't have an investment in EOS. Like I was like probably the biggest whale, and I didn't even have that much, or I didn't feel like I had that much. Kind of did, but kind of didn't. Obviously, the crowd sale generated $4 billion worth. So, clearly there's a lot of like, big players out there and stuff like that. So I just thought that was very odd. And I think that was a very telling sign that actually a lot of us community members were more invested in Eos than the actual Block.One employees. And I think that probably caused some problems, maybe down the road. It just, they weren't as invested in it. So they just kind of saw it as, this blockchain thing, it's kind of cool, crypto, it was just like, whatever. So, this is the Eosio software. So you got to differentiate. Block.One created the Eosio software. Obviously, they own other assets like voice.com and are doing other things and have other business endeavors. So, the thing about Eosio is there is a lot of community resources here. Like if you get on Eos.io and you go to developers, and you can go to like elemental battles, for instance, and you can learn how to develop on the Eosio software and learn about all the pieces and have a step-by-step, tutorial and everything of how to do this. So the tools are there from that aspect. Let's go a little bit further into this. So Eos VC, and this is a big talking point. I know that Eos Phoenix, or just Phoenix now, and I've seen a couple of his videos lately, and I've always followed him and stuff. Got a smaller channel, but is definitely deeply rooted in the community and stuff like that. Comes out with some good stuff, good ideas. And this is one of the things. So personally, I like after being at the Eos hackathons, you get super amped up, and I was one of the people that was first, even when it was like in the testnet phase. So there was like Dawn 1, Dawn 2, Dawn 3 in the testnet. I was like working with the software and like, trying to do some tutorials and trying to work with it early on. And that's ultimately what got me to the Eos hackathons, that, I was able to show that, hey, I was like working with this and really interested in it. And I'm an investor and all that kind of stuff. So Eos VC was supposed to deploy capital to a lot of different projects. I applied, I submitted a proposal to be funded by Eos VC, never heard anything back. Also, they did grants, and they were doing like $50,000 grants. I applied for a grant, never heard anything back. And you could kind of say I'm like a little bit bitter, but the thing is like, I don't feel like a lot of people are hearing back. And when I look at this stuff that, these logos and stuff, a lot of this stuff that's out there, even being someone in the community, I don't even recognize a lot of this stuff. Now, I recognize this, NuGet, because it's basically a decentralized or an incentivized version and decentralized version of GitHub. And they were at the like EOS San Francisco hackathon. And that was one of the things. Everpedia has been something that was out there for a long time. We'll go into that a little bit here in a minute. And then the other one that I really recognized was Karma. And I mentioned Dallas Rushing. He has a YouTube channel. And one of the founders of Karma, which is, basically a social networking app that runs on the Eosio software. But a lot of this stuff, some of the stuff I saw, I didn't really kind of consider it. Like Polymath, I didn't know that had anything to do with Eosio. But a lot of this stuff I don't recognize. So either they didn't have enough runway, didn't really get that much funding, or, and again, I don't know how much these different companies got funded, but I never heard anything back. And so, that was that. Obviously, the big thing that we were all excited about was Voice, or a Steemit 2.0 that was going to go on the EOS mainnet, and that was really going to drive a lot of demand to the EOS, token itself, but that never happened. They've got voice.com, and they've messed around with this, and it's just on a test net. And I really think that they're afraid to deploy it personally for just legality reasons, and I don't think they have a big incentive to deploy it. Going back, we've talked about, BitShares, the loss of value there. The loss of value is Steem. Again, it's probably about in the 140th place rank. I don't know why the rank's not showing up, and Hive has slipped further. Now, if we look at Karma, here's their website. But this is what happened to a lot of projects, and I feel bad. So it's ranked like number 745th on CoinMarketCap. But if you look at the liquidity, the volume, $60 in the last 24 hours, essentially everybody got off of it. And I feel bad for Dallas Rushing, and I saw a lot of potential in it. So I think that if they would have, had like, a better runway, they went over to the Wax blockchain when there was like issues with the Eos mainnet. And Nudex is cool. I mean, this is the thing. There's a decentralized exchange, on the Eos IO software, and you can connect to the Eos mainnet, Wax. You can, Tron. Well, maybe it's just Eos and Tron. It's just Eos and Tron. That's part of the reason this isn't really coming up. But no, it was like actually a very functional exchange, very interesting, everything like that. So there's, again, all the tools in place. Everpedia, I mentioned it. It had been out there for a while. And it does seem like this was the one that seems like it is holding some value. So essentially, decentralized and incentive, Wikipedia. And it does have volume, $3.1 million in the last 24 hours. And it does seem like there is, some activity on that. And it is on Binance. That's one of the things that they had success. They got on Binance and Upbit. So Upbit, they got there most. So maybe it's super popular in Korea. That's the only thing that I can think as far as that is concerned. Now let's talk a little bit more about Dan Larimer and kind of the whole situation. So I just recently read a book, and it's kind of interesting. He's releasing a lot of stuff on Hive. He sees it as the most decentralized social media platform, I guess, at this point. Obviously, with the recent stuff with Twitter, he doesn't really like to post there. He doesn't like to post it on Voice. He doesn't feel like it is going to solve, kind of what he needs and stuff. So he released a book for free. You guys can read it. And again, I'm trying to be the fairest. You can say this guy jumped ship 3 times. A very brilliant programmer. You could pretty much put him up there in the top 2. Him and Vitalik. I mean, you could throw a couple other guys in the mix with these blockchain developers. But he really is like kind of a rare genius. And I think that he means well, but in the same premise, you can't like keep doing this crowdfunding thing. Like he crowdfunded with the ProtoShares, BitShares thing, got that money. He crowdfunds with like the Steam thing, and there was a real weird launch with Steam. They end up getting a lot there. Then he leaves, and then he does this other crowdfunding thing with Eos, and so they have our money, and then it's just like, okay, he's leaving again to work on some other projects, write some books. Maybe he'll develop a dApp. Maybe he'll develop another blockchain. But if he's going to do a crowd sale again or some kind of like funding, it doesn't sit well with us that have been involved in this. And again, can we fault Block.One? I think that they took a position of self-preservation more than they took a position of trying to grow the EOS mainnet or try to grow these sister chains like Telos and stuff like that and grow the community. They sat there and they bought up a bunch of Bitcoin. They understood the market cycles. Now they own tens of thousands of Bitcoin, and good for them. Now they have $10 billion worth of assets, but we don't own any part of that. We invested. They got to $4 billion through our contributions, and then now they're at $10 billion, and have grown this because of the appreciation of Bitcoin. So there isn't an incentive to really kind of grow the EOS mainnet. They've got their money. They can perpetuate the 10 billion, and that's probably going to turn into 20 billion, 40 billion. If they just like don't scale up too much, like keep the employees low, have them work on some stuff, and then they could, Brendan Bloomer could pay himself $20 million a year salary and pay some of these other investors a bunch of money, and everything will be sweet for them, and they can come tinker around with the software and stuff like that and kind of do it and everything, and they've perpetuated themselves in the future, and we just kind of got a little bit left behind. But again, I'm trying to be fair. We do have the EOS IO software. We do have the fiat on-ramps, Coinbase, Kraken, Binance. We do have all those, so somebody really could build something if you have enough money to do it. But then if EOS VC is not really supporting these projects and nobody else is sitting there saying, yeah, build on that chain, it kind of goes. But you could take the thing and you could deploy another chain and stuff like that. So One thing I did want to say about delegated proof of stake that we've seen that's been an issue, it has a lot of issues of fracturing. Like people in the community will we can point to someone and say, I don't think this person's doing, and I'm not pointing at any of these. I'm just saying these are the people like for the Hive blockchain. We can point to somebody. And the same thing with Eos, you could point to the block producers and you could say, they're not doing anything, they're not helping out the community, they're not developing any tools, blah, 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 blah. And then people become discontent and they fall into the church effect where they start up another church, start up another blockchain. And then, that's why we have Telos and we have Wax and we have Ultra and we have all these others. So, and you see it with Steam. Steam Chill is a real person, but, D-Like I think is a real thing. But some of this stuff, I kind of question if it's just, puppets that are Justin Sun's puppets or something there. We don't really know. We're fighting for pennies out there, but hey, man, get a little bit of crypto. I'll keep putting it on every platform. But Dan, you can kind of read up on him and some of his reasonings of maybe why he left. My resignation from CTO of Block.One. Now, that being said, you hear everything I've said, and I do have some of these notes that I wanted to kind of pop through, but Eos, the positives, there's $10 billion in assets in Block.One's possession, but, only if they use it on these public chains would it really benefit you. You don't have an investment in Block.One, so Eos mainnet is not a security. The SEC determined that. The crowd sale, the Ethereum token, the ERC20 token was, but we're past that. So that it's not a security if you develop on Eos. Fastest blockchain with all the fiat on-ramps. Largest distribution because there's Coinbase Earn. So a lot of people have been exposed to Eos. Obviously being 15th still on CoinMarketCap and was as high as probably 5th or 6th. Actual working smart contract platform. The unfortunate thing, I call it the Bigfoot effect, but basically, stuff like Cardano that is not a working smart contract platform. When there's a carrot hanging out there, it's coming along, it's going to be great, it's going to be great. It's almost like that stuff does better than the actual product just being there and being like, this is what it is, guys. Very weird. EOS negatives, block producer collusion. DPoS always seems unfair because you can point fingers at someone. Only good for those people in the club. DPoS's unspoken threat are community members always wanting to break away. So you get Wax, Telos, Ultra, whatever. Cultist church effect. If you see a small town in the Midwest that maybe has 1,000 people, there's suddenly 6 churches, and you're thinking, why is that? People can't get along, and so they fracture. Be like, we're going to do it our own way. So you get that with DPoS. You don't see that as much with like Ethereum. Yeah, there's Ethereum Classic, but you don't see that as much. Let's see, still network congestion issues. So obviously, like every time the community fractures, a lot of resources, a lot of mental energy and all that kind of stuff gets diverted to these different chains. And if all of them would have just stayed on Eos, maybe we would have solved the problems of Eos somehow, but they felt like they couldn't because the chain had been compromised by all these Chinese block producers. That's the way everybody felt, and the problems were not getting solved, so they left. They become impatient, kind of like with the price. We wouldn't even be having this conversation if the price was $50 per EOS, then everything would be fine. And you see that with Ethereum. I mean, the fees are out of control. Gas fees are out of control. Bitcoin, the fees are out of control. But people are like, whatever, and then they just kind of ride it up. Okay, so there's still network congestion issues that need to be hashed out on the EOS mainnet. People are clowning on the fact that Dan left his third project. They're kind of clowning on us as investors, to be honest with you. They're like, well, we told you he left 2 projects. Now he left a third. So, I mean, we kind of look like fools in that way. Block.One's issues, I mean, they're going to be fine financially. They can play things out for a decade or more. Like I said, if they now they're just this like retainer for like the funds that they got from us. Now they've grown that, and now they're able to grow it more. And they might be earning a decent amount consulting fees from like big corporations that want to run the EOS.io software like internally. I mean, we don't really know. So they'll be fine, but that doesn't have anything to do with us. they went to Dan in Blacksburg, Virginia, just like Steemit Incorporated. It's going to be this weird thing. If Dan like launches another project, it's going to be weird. There was a time when Steemit Incorporated and Block.One were basically in Blacksburg at the same time, and it'd be like, oh, wait, you guys work on Dan's last project? What? It's like weird. Let's see. They never got a lot of people who were crypto people in the first place. Like I said, we were invested in this in a lot of respects kind of more than the employees that they brought on in a place like Blacksburg. And that's not saying anything bad about the employees. A lot of good people there, met a lot of good people, and they learned a lot and stuff of being involved. And it was their first entry into crypto and stuff like that. Probably just focus on selling Eos IO software to large companies. And I think that's the way Block.One's going to go. Voice.com, I don't think that's ever going to hit the mainnet. And to be honest with you, I don't think it's ever going to hit any public chain. And if it does, there's going to be like ridiculous amounts of KYC. I mean, from the get-go, I never even got on it because I was like, okay, they're doing full KYC. That's not going to work. People aren't going to get on a social network where you have to submit IDs and passports and stuff like that. You're never going to get it to scale. It's never going to work. And sure enough, when we see that it's a joke. I mean, I don't want to say a joke. Like, there's a lot of people that have worked on it, I'm sure, hard. And they're frustrated. They probably want to see it deployed. But it's probably unwise for Block.One to deploy it because they're like, well, right now we can just ride our Bitcoin stack. And again, they're just riding this crypto boom. And then they can just, sell out like towards the peak and pay large salaries and just chill. They left a lot of the community hanging, no runway, no funding, EOS VC / grants. I just wonder how much people got, to be honest with you. Again, like I said, I applied twice. I know that Kent from Eos San Diego said he would try to reach out to get an interview with Dan, and, he had troubles doing that and stuff like that. I just think a lot of community members, like Block.One just kind of seemed unreachable. Dan Larimer seemed unreachable in some respects. Now, I did meet, Dan and have a brief conversation with him at the EOS Hackathon in San Francisco. Probably put a picture up there of that. I think that the whole thing looks really good up front during the customer and investor acquisition phase, and they put on these hackathons that were grandiose. And obviously, everything going on in the world, you can't really be having the hackathons like we did. So you can't blame them all for that and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, my original EOS strategy was to sell all my airdrops and sister chains for EOS, stacking as many EOS as possible. Now what I've done, I've sold 90 to 95% of my holdings because Dan can take the place of 10 or 12 blockchain developers. The guy is very smart, and a lot of people invested in EOS because of Dan Larimer. So now that he's not there, and now that it's kind of like the excitement around the project has kind of like faded, and the writing's sort of on the wall, and I wish I would have done that sooner. I just had other stuff going on, and just figured it would sort itself out, and then the price wasn't moving, and then now that this has happened, but now I still have enough that if this thing goes to 50 or $100, I'm still catching a ride. So I don't want to sell completely out of my position, and I've learned that over time. If you still have something that still has a chance to at least leave a little bit in there, because in case the impossible or the crazy thing happens, some black swan event or some crazy thing, then you're still going to catch a ride, and it might just catch a ride just inherently because of the boom. Let's see here. Okay, I thought about sticking around and making a stand and being like, no, we'll stay and let's really do something with this. We have this chain, we have the on-ramps, we have the fiat on-ramps, let's do this. And then I just kind of just sat back and just thought about BitShares and Steem and Hive and how the value has eroded from those, and how so many people have been trapped into this thing that has terrible tokenomics, and how it's just devalued their investment and practically they're on suicide watch. So I'm like, no thanks. I will jump to this top of the stack and leave some other stuff behind if I have to. I thought about reaching out to Brendan Bloomer and, kind of seeing, hey, can I get some funding to do something and this and that. And I just thought, these guys don't care about us. They kind of, I'm not going to, they had money to begin with, but now they've got billions. And to them, I just honestly, to tell you the truth, I just think the community is just kind of peasants to them. I don't really think that Brennan Bloomer or any of these guys really care about us. I mean, that's just my true feelings. Maybe I'm wrong, but they just didn't deploy the capital. They sat on Bitcoin. And that's the one thing that we have to look at. Block.One showed you they are just sitting on Bitcoin. So why shouldn't you? Or not necessarily should you sit on Bitcoin, but why should you invest in Eos when they're not investing in Eos? They showed you their hand. They didn't believe in the community. They didn't believe in the public chain. They went for self-preservation, so you have to go for self-preservation to some respect. We want to build our capital, and, yes, it is true that the Eos mainnet is the most valuable, fastest chain, if half-second block times, and it still is worth billions of dollars. And there's a lot of potential there, and there's a lot of tools around it. There's a lot of smart people around it. But then at the end of the time, like, the tide is kind of going out on that. So for Dan Larimer, I mean, he's a brilliant guy, but I think he becomes very discontent with what's going on in the crypto market. And it's going to be hard to raise money in the future. But anyway, guys, that is the video. Follow me on all social media, at Brian Phobos, YouTube, Instagram, Steam at Library, Twitter, Hive, Steam, everywhere. And leave a comment below. What do you guys think? Are you guys going to invest in Eos, or did you get rid of your stake? See you guys later.